Kindly give us your full names, please.
My name is Edward David SINGHATEH.
Date of birth?
8th of August 1968.
Where were you born?
United Kingdom.
Mr. SINGHATEH, allow for 3 seconds between our speeches. That way our speeches would not overlap. That would also assist the interpreters. And be able to interpret that in the local language. You were born in the United Kingdom. Where in the United Kingdom?
Melton Mowbray, Leicestershire.
And in which part of the United Kingdom? England, Ireland, Wales?
England.
Thank you. And where did you go to school?
I started school in St. Francis Primary School, United Kingdom, and then my father relocated back to the Gambia with the whole family, and I started at Bakau Primary School in the 70s. From there I proceeded to St. Augustine's High School, and after my O-levels I went to the Gambia High School for my advanced levels.
Perfect. I have looked at your statement, and a Mr. Seni Sise was your headmaster at Bakau Primary School. Is that right?
That is correct.
Wonderful. Good. Please the profile into the other things.
Okay. No, I mean, should I proceed with my own profile?
Yes.
From here?
Yes.
Okay. So from 1990 to 1991, I worked as an electronic technician at the Gambia Civil Aviation Authority. 1991, January, I joined the Gambia National Army. In May of 1991, I was promoted to an officer cadet. I served as an officer cadet until January of 1990. I was commissioned as a second lieutenant. I was then sent on course to the United States, and on my return sometime in October of 1992, I was made platoon commander in Alpha Company 1 Battalion. I remained as a platoon commander of the Alpha Company, intermittently sent to oversee the intelligence unit for a very brief time, but generally I was in that position until July 22nd, 1994.
Platoon commander in the Alpha Company.
Yes.
Who was the company commander?
My company commander initially was Captain Sanjiva. He was a captain at the time. I think he retired as a major or lieutenant colonel. Subsequently, my company commander, there was a short while that we did not have a company commander, so I was overseeing the company. But then my last company commander prior to the takeover in 1994 was Major Baji.
At what stage, if any, did you work with then Captain Mamad Cham?
Captain Mamad Cham, I was posted to Echo Company as an officer cadet. I was at the training school, and to get a little bit of experience in leadership prior to going to the United States on training, we were sent to Echo Company. We were attached to Echo Company, and the company commander was Mamad Cham at the time.
Perfect. Could you proceed with your description of your profile, your biography?
Yes, sir. From July 22nd, 1994 to sometime in February, March 1995, I served as Minister of Defense. After the arrest and detention of Captain Sana Sabali, who was then the Vice Chairman of the Armed Forces Provisional Ruling Council, I became Vice Chairman of the Armed Forces Provisional Ruling Council and Minister of Defense. I stayed in that role until September of 1996, and after the presidential elections, the president-elect at the time made me Vice President Designate. I was Vice President Designate until March of 1997, and in the new cabinet I was made Minister for Presidential Affairs, Fisheries, Natural Resources, Forestry, the Environment, and National Assembly Affairs. I believe I stayed in that role until March of 2000, sorry, August of 2000. And then I was reassigned to the Ministry of Works, Communications, and Information. But I still retained the Presidential Affairs portfolio along with National Assembly Affairs. Yes, sir.
It's correct that you continued to hold ministerial positions until September 2007.
Yes, I held various portfolios such as works and infrastructure, trade, industry and employment, forestry and environment until 2007. Yes, sir, that is correct.
And then what did you do after 2007?
Well, I started studying law at the University of the Gambia September 2006. I finished in 2010. In March of 2011, I joined the judiciary and I was magistrate class 1 at the Brikama Magistrates Court. In September of 2012, I was posted to Bundung and made acting principal magistrate. I stayed in that role until, I believe, March of 2013, when I left the judiciary and joined private practice. I worked as a legal practitioner, private legal practitioner at Dandimayo Chambers until February of 2016. I was appointed Vice President of the ECOWAS Commission. In March of 2016, I stayed in that role until March of 2018. From March 2018 to date, I have been working as a consultant.
Thank you. So for 12 out of these 22 years of Jammeh, you worked with him?
Yes, sir. I guess, if you calculate it, yes.
Yes, I have calculated it. I dare say even 13, because 1994, half of 1994 included. So I would take it that you know Jammeh pretty well in view of this long period of association with him.
Is that a question? Or?
Yes, it is a question.
Well, I know him from a lot of the testimony that I have heard during the course of this commission has led to me believing that perhaps I didn't know him as well as I thought I had, but that is subjective.
We will get into all that, Mr. Singhateh. You joined the Gambia National Army in the early 90s. In 1991, you were an officer cadet. Could you tell us, because you have straddled pretty much both ends, a recruit, a very junior officer, and trainee officer, that is cadet, and then a commissioned officer. At that time, what were the problems in the army?
Well, at the beginning, there were not many problems. I dare say the military is a tough place. I believe it was President George W. Bush who said that if you cannot stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. But, I mean, having said that...
Must the kitchen be necessarily hot?
Figure of speech, sir.
Proceed, please.
Thank you. At the beginning, everything was okay. There were no problems. The military was sizable. It was growing. However, it was like a small unit. It was not established as a full army, because everything was located either at Yundum or Farafenni. But this is not one of the problems that we faced. I'm just trying to give a general description. But having said that, morale was okay. It was generally high. There was an incident or two regarding the soldiers who had returned from Liberia, who had started a mutiny, and it had got out of hand in Yundum. I think soldiers from Charlie Company and then subsequently Delta Company. There were shots fired, but there were no casualties.
And what was the source of that discontent? Was it just unpaid allowances, or there were other problems?
Well, yes, there were other problems. I was very new in the army at that time, so perhaps I would not have been able to understand seeded problems that soldiers that had served for several years were facing. But talking, of course, to some of them, they were complaining about arbitrary dismissals. You know, summary justice in the army can be very brutal. You can be charged for a minor offense, a minor infringement, maybe insubordination. You will be marched to the adjutant, and he can dismiss you. It's his prerogative. So yes, definitely there must have been major discontent for them to go to the extent of conducting a mutiny.
But you are not aware of the sources of that discontent?
Like I said, at the time I was very new in the army. I was still an officer cadet, so I really didn't know.
How about the conditions of service up to the point officers like yourself decided to overthrow the constitutional order? What were the conditions in the army?
Okay. I proceeded for training in January of 1992, and I returned, like I have just informed you, sometime in October of the same year. Now, when I arrived, the British Army training team were just about to hand over to the Nigerian Army Technical Assistance Group, NATAG. There was a lot of confusion. We didn't know the reasons why that was happening. They weren't advanced to us. It was a political decision, but which was accepted, and we just followed orders. Subsequent to that, there was a discontent. Morale started to dwindle. There were no recruitments, and subsequent batches that had finished their term were leaving, and so the workload increased, and they were not. The Nigerians were not recruiting. I'm not sure whether it was a finance issue or whether it was a policy issue, but that was a problem. The same summary dismissals became even worse because, of course, you see, the Nigerian army is a very big army, very regimented. Gambian culture had seeped into our ranks, and so.
What do you mean by that? Gambian culture has seeped into our ranks. Could you be more specific?
Okay, I can, but now you are interceding and then cutting my flow. But let me explain that.
Please do expect that, because it is my responsibility to lead
As
you
long
in
as you
evidence.
take note and then allow me to come back to my trend of explanation, otherwise those who are following it would not fully understand where I was trying to get to.
But I determine
Okay.
what is relevant for the purposes of the hearing, and therefore, if need be, I would just cut you off.
Absolutely.
Politely, and make sure that we put it things on the right track, at least, because there is so much to say. Otherwise, we would spend a lot of time talking about things that may not necessarily be helpful, at least in our view. So kindly proceed, please. We want to know what were those Gambian cultures that seeped into the ranks.
Tribalism, for instance, the officer corps was fragmented. You had the Mandinkas, and then you had the few Wolofs. And I would have touched on this a little bit later anyway, because this is how or what would explain to you a little bit about Yaya Jammeh and his position in the officer corps. Because being a Jola and an outsider, he was not fully accepted. But coming back to the exact question, yes, of course, regional affiliation, but not only that. I will give you an example. You see, Sana Sabali was once punished by one of the Nigerian officers for eating on the same plate with a junior soldier, with a soldier, I think a private soldier or a lance corporal. Now, in our culture, you have some food, you're eating, you see somebody, you call them to eat. It's normal. But obviously, in a proper regimented army, there is a limit to how far you can mix. And that's why I said the Gambian culture had sort of seeped into the military, and this is one example of the clash of cultures, or clash with culture versus regimentation that we had. Even though I must say that the punishment, definitely was right, because in normal armies you cannot fraternize with junior ranks.
That is true. So besides, well, continue with your description of the problems
Okay.
that you experienced at that time.
Okay, sir, yes. Well, apart from the downsizing of the army, or the shrinking of the military because of non-recruitment and soldiers leaving, the conditions were also deteriorating as well. The British at least looked a little bit more, I should not say a little bit, they made sure that whatever was due as far as welfare was concerned was given. Now, under the NATAG, especially for guards that were on duty and the duty officers, the feeding really deteriorated to an extent that we were being given rotten food. Yes, sir, you wanted.
Was that a matter of routine, or was it just some occasional aberration, a situation that just happened out of control of those responsible?
It was not a matter of this thing happening occasionally. It became routine, and it featured in our reports as duty officers, and our reports were rejected, and we were told to go back and then write it properly, otherwise we would face the punishment.
How frequent was this? You said it was a matter of routine. I would imagine it would happen 2-3 times a week.
Something of this, well, put it this way. Over the weekends, when most officers, the senior officers, are not in the camp, we would eat rotten food. Put it that way.
The reason why I asked this question is that we have received testimony from a number of soldiers who served at the same time with you and who actually participated in the coup with you. Of course, they did indicate that the food wasn't the best quality, but this is the first time we have heard evidence of rotten food being served to soldiers as a matter of routine. What do you say to that?
Counsel, there was a day I went on patrol to Army headquarters, and the food that I was served at Yundum, I touched the fish and it was
slimy.
No, it was paste, like a paste. I didn't eat it, but by the time I got to Army headquarters, there was no soldier there. And I was worried because the gates were open and I thought that perhaps something was happening. Where are the guards? So I stayed there. I didn't have a radio. There was no means to communicate. I stood on Marina Parade looking left and right and wondering what is going on. But after a few minutes, I saw a soldier come in from the junction just by Atlantic Hotel. And he was dragging his AK-47 and coming down the road. So I waited until he came close and I said, "What is going on?" He said, "Sir, we are all sick." I said, "But what are you doing on the beach?" He said, "We all have diarrhea and there's no toilets at the Army headquarters." So I really didn't know that until that point that there were no toilet facilities or facilities to for soldiers to take care of their personal hygiene at the Army headquarters, who had to stay there for a week on guard, and that all the time they would go one by one to the beach and then defecate at the beach. I only found out because they were all sick and they all had to go to the toilet at the same time, and so the Army headquarters was left wide open. But they were very sick, and I spent my last money because the Army was low on drugs at the time. The clinics definitely had not been stocked as far as I know. So I spent my last money for them to get medication.
But apart from this particular instance, recall any other instance?
Yes, of course. I recall many incidents where I myself would not eat the food. And if I don't eat the food, if the food is not fit for my consumption, it's not fit for my soldiers' consumption. And so I would put it in the But remember, I was a recruit and then I was a cadet officer. I used to have my food from the general kitchen. And so if the cook sees that the line is still long and there is... order somebody to bring a bucket of water. But, like I said, the military is a tough place, and I'm not complaining about that. I ate it because I was hungry.
What other problems did you, or what were the other difficulties that obtained in the Army?
Yes, like I said, apart from lack of equipment, the infrastructure that was there was not maintained or taken care of. When soldiers had to sleep in the barracks at the time, the sponges were falling apart. There were bed bugs in the guard room, and really, I mean, conditions, like I said, were less than favorable. And so it was not difficult to convince soldiers that they deserve and need better.
How about the socio-political conditions at the time prevailing in the country?
Well, I was not too much into politics, but I knew that as a country we could do better. That Gambia deserved development, we deserved schools, we deserved hospitals, we deserved better communications, we deserved better infrastructure. And I know a lot of people are going to say that, well, we have heard this song before, but let us transform our, let us walk down memory lane a little bit. And you know, most of those who are above 40, 50 can recall what Gambia was like at the time. The only means of communication through Radio Gambia stopped at Brikama. Couldn't get the signal before that. There was no television station. But even if that was a luxury, there were two hospitals, Bansang Hospital, Royal Victoria Hospital. The Ahmadiyya Hospital is private. Everything else was private, and people mostly could not afford that. You go to the hospital, there is no drugs, even though that story has definitely continued down the line. There were not enough schools.
So these were the socio-political
Well, can
conditions.
I explain, sir, please? I know we are pressed for time, but
Yes,
I'm on the hot seat, and I would...
It's not hot yet, Mr. Singhateh. So,
Well...
So this, you know, you've just said that these are things that are known. So I just want us to put things into context. If it becomes absolutely necessary, yes, by all means, I'll give you the opportunity to. But we just need to summarize on those points. Otherwise, we would spend the whole day here. I mean, we all do know that there were lots of problems. I just want you to identify those problems that perhaps led to the coup eventually. But at least in a very summarized way.
Okay, sir. Well, you said it's not hot yet. Please, you have got very good staff. If you can ask them to put some ice in the freezer, so that when it becomes hot, they can assist. I don't want to catch fire.
You wouldn't be needing it.
Okay, sir. I'm grateful. Yes, but I mean, like I said, with regards to the deficit of infrastructure vis-a-vis the population at the time growing at 4.5% per annum, we knew that definitely Gambians deserved better. We needed more schools. We needed more hospitals. We needed more roads. We needed everything that every other country had that we felt that Gambians deserved. And we wanted to give that to them.
Yes, but
yes,
Mr. Singhate,
yes,
at that time, you were aware of your role and responsibility in society as a soldier, were you not?
Absolutely, sir.
And all these problems, what did you decide to do?
Okay. With all of these problems, we decided to step in and rectify the problems. That's what we had decided to do, even our lives in. We knew it was illegal. Definitely we did. This is why everything that we did was clandestine. We didn't plan in the open. We made sure that we planned in absolute secrecy until we succeeded. So definitely we admit it was unconstitutional, it was treason, and like I said, it was worth it if at all we could build a hospital that will save lives, if at all we could build schools that will educate our people.
What I'm trying to drive at here is the mindset of the Gambian soldiers. Is it the position of the soldiers in the army at that time that it is their responsibility to overthrow a government that they believe was not performing for the benefit of the people, or it was not performing to the expectation of the people?
Absolutely not. I would not want to put any blame on any soldier or any don't do it, then it is their duty. No, that was not the mindset of GNA at the time.
But was that your mindset? Was that the mindset of Sana Sabali? Was that the mindset of Yaya Jammeh? And of course, Sadiq Haidar?
Subsequently, yes, there was a meeting of the minds with regards to a higher course, a greater responsibility of what we could do.
A greater responsibility by whose standard? Because the people have established a constitutional order, and the people who are the higher authority have decided that this is the only means by which we change a government. And you, a group of young officers, you sat there and think it's a higher calling for you to overthrow that arrangement by the people.
Council, I'm not arguing with the legality or illegality
or the morality of it.
I am not arguing with that. Well, morality, then you're going into a very gray area. Because if we want to talk morality and the law, you know as a lawyer that there's a gray area. And I can very well sit here and argue that yes, of course, if my illegal act has saved the lives of many or improved their lives, then there is a moral justification. So I don't want to go down. I don't want to go down that. I don't want to go down that gray area.
I want you to bring out all the arguments, your reasoning, why you did what you did. Because remember, Mr. Singhateh, that part of our mandate is to identify some of the reasons why some of these terrible things happened in our society. So if we do not know about this type of thinking in the army, perhaps there can't be re-education of the soldiers to remedy these things. So that's why I want you to bring it all up.
Yes, but I think you were losing sight of one very important fact. Soldiers are part and parcel of society. We live in society. Families are integrated. Well, provide for the installation and how do I put it, voting in and voting out of governments. But still, sometimes, especially in Africa or in third world countries, if the political process is not bearing dividends, people do tend to take matters into their own hands. Now, please bear with me. Let me give you an example. With the Arab Spring, launched by civilians, the same thinking. Governments are not doing anything. They have perpetuated themselves in power and they are abusing their authorities. Let us force a change. But the same thing with Sudan. Yes, sir.
This is fundamentally different. Government or power belongs to the people, and the people can change how they are governed or by whom they are governed anytime they want. But that is different from a group of soldiers taking it upon themselves to overthrow the lawfully constituted order. Don't you see a difference?
No, there is no difference. Remember, according to our laws, civilians are not permitted to change a government anytime they want. And I want to underline that, anytime. they are given the opportunity to do that every 5 years, where they have the mandate to remove a government. If there is no time frame and laws to protect a government in place, there will be anarchy and chaos. You will have a group of people who are not satisfied. They will get up and remove a government, and that cannot. That is why we have laws, sir.
Yes, that is why we have laws. But I would want to avoid this debate, this discussion, for obvious reasons. I don't want this to be seen as a platform wherein ideas are being drummed into people's heads, especially in view of the current political climate. So let's just put that issue aside, all right? And let's just be content with the fact that power belongs to the people. The soldiers do not have any authority to overthrow a government, no matter how bad that government is.
I agree.
Perfect. So then let's move on to your planning of July 22nd coup d'etat. You've told us that you were motivated by the terrible or deteriorating conditions in the army. I mean, the food was very bad, facilities were lacking, equipment was not there, there was deficit in infrastructure and so forth. And there were also problems in the society. So how or what really got you guys together and planned a coup d'etat, and how was that done?
As Sana Sabali had mentioned, those discussions advanced, and the first mutiny occurred, I forgot the month, but it was in 1994 in Kudang during an exercise, I believe. And because the exercise was not properly planned, because the equipment was not there, the conditions, well, of course, I mean, you go to the bush to have the conditions of your own house. But there was a lot of discontent. And myself and Sana Sabali started, joined the conversation of officers complaining. And there is where we sounded their opinion, and all of their opinion at the time was, yes, the system is not a good system, it should go.
Was that a mutiny, or was it complaints in private by a group of soldiers with one common mind?
Well, sir, if you, as a soldier, complain to an extent that you agree that a system has to go, I believe if it is not mutiny, they are the seeds of mutiny.
Perhaps let's limit it to the seeds of mutiny for now.
That is fine. Yes,
we've received evidence that the exercise in Kudang was a good success.
Well, success, in my professional view as an officer, was not a success. The logistics were not in place. Command and control was a mess. I can say this because I was the commander for the opposing force, the enemy forces, and I could see how much in disarray the exercise was, because the attacks were not properly coordinated. Nothing was properly coordinated. So for me, the lessons that we learned from Kudang, that at that time the Gambia National Army was not battle ready, and we needed more exercises from section level to platoon level, company level, which had not happened for a long time.
What do you say to the suggestion that the Nigerian officers were on top of their game, they knew what they were doing, everything went well?
I will tell you one thing. The Nigerian officers that came to the Gambia were definitely knowledgeable. They were very good officers. They knew what they were doing. Whether they practice that all the time, I don't think so. However, they were definitely good officers because they have, you see, the Nigerian army is a professional army. And in order to rise through the ranks, you really have to be worth your salt. So I cannot fault the standards of the officers who came.
What was the problem?
Well, like I said, the Nigerian pecking order is very harsh. Very, very harsh. And I'll give you an example. The current Minister of Defense, Major Five, is a very good officer, a good friend of mine. He was embarrassed in our presence on more than one occasion. And for us, senior officers should be treated in a particular way. But there was once he was embarrassed severely by Colonel Okoji and another by Colonel Owonibi. And this, you know, I mean, like I said, the Nigerian pecking order is very harsh, and it was difficult for Gambian officers to grasp that.
So from what you have said, there was no inefficiency or incompetence on the part of the Nigerian army officers who were deployed to train or manage the Gambian National Army at the time.
I would not call it incompetence. Obviously, you can be competent, but then not execute the functions of your duties.
What does that mean? I mean, it's either a deliberate effort not to deliver, or one is simply incompetent. So which was it?
Perhaps, maybe they were just not interested in delivering. I don't know what the terms of the agreement bringing them here was, but I can remember being told that they were supposed to be here to a certain level, bring the army up to a certain level, and then depart.
But that training you talked about in Kudan, yes, was an exercise organized by the Nigerians,
yes,
wasn't it?
Yes, it
was it properly executed?
Well, in my view, it was not properly executed, no.
And who should take responsibility for that?
Definitely the commander at the time.
Nigeria.
Yes.
And as a result of that, you were so disgruntled, you thought that the Nigerians should not be leading the army, correct?
Well, like that was the general feeling.
So therefore,
even though it was not my personal, but generally, yes, in the army, yes, there was that discontent.
So the issue of the Nigerians, their presence and leadership in the army contributed to really why the group of officers decided that it was crunch time, it's about time we get rid of this government. Is that the case?
It did contribute, but it was not the sole contributing factor.
That's why we say it did contribute.
Yes, but not in a very major, significant way that all that one could say, no, it's because of the Nigerians. No, it was not.
That the issue of the Nigerians was not the only reason. We've discussed the other reasons. So at Kudan, you said there was a mutiny. Can you tell us who participated in those discussions, sowing the seeds of a mutiny?
Most of the junior officers at the time, I cannot name all, but the few that I can name, which myself and Sana Sabali subsequently brought on board and talked to be part of the process, were Alpha Kinte, Lieutenant Alpha Kinte, and Lieutenant Kante.
First name, Lieutenant Kante?
Is Alaji Kante.
Yes. Kindly tell us about the planning for this school.
So, upon our return from Kudang, myself and Sana Sabali took things further. We approached Alaji Kante and Alpha Kinte separately and talked to them about this idea. And
what idea?
Taking over the government. So we spoke to them about this whole plot, and they bought in.
At this stage, you had a brother who was also in the army, correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
And he was also an officer like yourself?
Absolutely.
Did you bring him into the plan?
No way, I did not.
And why is that?
You see, he, I believe, would never have bought into it, and we might have argued, and that would have been it. I never informed him at any one time of the plans to take over the government. He was never part of it.
Okay, so you discussed with Sana Sabali, Alpha Kinte, and Alaji Kante.
Yes, sir.
And then proceed from there.
So, when we met, we were second lieutenants, all of us. We said, look, we decided that, look, we need somebody a little bit more senior, somebody with a little bit more experience, somebody who will be able to lead, somebody who we have confidence in, somebody who we can rely on. And we collectively chose Lieutenant Barrow, Basiru Barrow. And we approached him, and he agreed. And so the original 5 members of the plot to overthrow the Jawara government were Lieutenant Basiru Barrow, Lieutenant Alpha Kinte, Lieutenant Alaji Kante, Lieutenant Sana Sabali, and myself.
Do you recall how many months before July 22nd was this plan hatched?
I cannot recall exactly, but from the time we left Kudang, I am not sure whether it was April or March. It must have been after independence. Well, I could be wrong, but please go back to the records. I don't want to inadvertently mislead the Commission.
But this group of 5,
yes,
the membership later changed.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, we once met outside the camp in amongst some lime trees. There were some lime trees somewhere adjacent to Yundum camp, and we went there. And
does it have a name?
No, I think there was an agricultural installation next door, and we crossed the fence, and then we went, because we could not talk in the barracks. We had to find a way, but we were spotted by military intelligence, and they reported the matter. So obviously, it's treasonous. The stakes are very high, and so one after the other, they decided to withdraw.
Who withdrew?
If I can remember, it must have been, well, I cannot remember between Alaji Kante and Alaji Kinte, Alpha Kinte, who withdrew first, but I know they were perhaps the first 2 in succession to leave. And there was 3 of us, Lieutenant Barrow, myself, and Sana Sabali. So we had no choice but to bring others on board. 3 of us, 3 officers cannot launch a coup like this. I suggested Yaya Jammeh, and the response that I got from Barrow was not a good one. Sana Sabali was a little bit tame.
Tell us about the response you got from Barrow. What did he say?
He told me, Ndoke Nyimma Fanlong.
What does that mean in English?
He does it, well, what is the direct, okay, direct translation is that he doesn't know himself, but we know what it means in English, that he's arrogant. And even though I tried to talk to him, he wouldn't buy it. But I had gone ahead and spoke to Jammeh anyway, despite Basiru Barrow telling me not to. So I had spoke to Jammeh, and he came on board. But the funny thing is, after telling me that Yahya Jammeh is arrogant, he told me that he's the type that will tell you that he can hold one LMG here, one LMG there, and then that's
do the Rambo thing.
Exactly, which as professional soldiers is rubbish. But funnily, he actually said that he can hold an LMG here and then take State House. He did tell me that.
So from that point on, you guys knew that he was prone to exaggeration. He was prone to saying things that would not cut the grain.
Yes, but you take some things with a pinch of salt or as a joke.
Or a bag of salt.
Well, a bag of salt is a little bit too harsh, you know, between friends and comrades. You know, you do have people that exaggerate all the time, but you don't take those comments too seriously. But the important thing was he came on board.
Why did you think Jammeh was a good choice, in spite of the protestations of your senior, Basiru Barrow?
Well, we needed additional officers. He had served in the Presidential Guard, and perhaps his inside knowledge would help in the planning, in drawing the plans.
Or was he just a ready-made candidate in view of the fact that he was always against the government?
Not at all. I can explain to you how I came to be acquainted with Jammeh, but it had nothing to do with politics. I had never discussed politics. In fact, at the time that I approached him because we had already built up a relationship, and not because of his views.
All right, proceed. So now you've recruited Jammeh, so it's now four of you.
Yes, sir.
Basiru Barrow, Edward Singhateh, Sana Sabali, and Yahya Jammeh.
Yes, sir. Then, after Jammeh had come on board, Basiru Barrow decided to withdraw.
Why?
Well, like I said, it had leaked, and tension, the tension was building. We were being watched by military intelligence, we knew that. All along, let me also shed light on this second part of it. There was a parallel process also being run. It is not only the recruitment of the officers.
What do you mean by a parallel process being run?
Yes, sir, that is what I'm trying to explain. 4 or 5 officers alone cannot take over a government without the buy-in of the soldiers. And so I used my position as platoon commander in Alpha Company, and I was the only platoon commander at the time, so I was basically taking care of all of the 3 platoons. Under Major Momodu Baji, I was the subaltern, I was a junior officer, so I would act as platoon commander, even though according to the military hierarchy, if at all the platoon commander is not there, then the platoon sergeant will stand in for the platoon commander. And I was platoon commander for 1st platoon. There was the senior sergeant acting for 2nd platoon, and so on and so forth for the 3rd platoon. But still, as the officer, I was the one who was giving guidance. And I had developed a relationship with my troops. This relationship was built with confidence. I would make sure that I look after the welfare of my soldiers. I would counsel them. I would be concerned about their welfare. And for example, you have a good soldier who, for some reason, doesn't turn up for duty. Now, rather than charge him with an offense for being absent from place of duty, I will counsel him and find out what is happening at home.
essentially you developed a relationship
Yes,
with your troops,
yes.
and they trusted you.
Yes, absolutely.
And proceed from there.
So what I did was I slowly got buy-in of a few, and then extended it and extended it and extended it until generally I got the buy-in of Alpha Company. And I was the only officer amongst us that was in command of soldiers at the time. Sanasabali was in charge of support weapons. He had no weapons. He had no troops. He had no office. He was a refugee in the camp. He was just roaming around until he was given a small place somewhere. So I used that connection with my connection with the troops to get them on board, and that is why I said there was a parallel process. So whilst the officers were preparing themselves, I was preparing the troops at the same time. Even though when Sanasabali was a duty officer, he would talk to the soldiers on duty at the time, but you just cannot stand in front of a parade and tell them, look, we are going to overthrow a government who is in. No, you cannot do that. I mean, there's a way that you have to slowly inculcate your thinking into the troops' thinking and then get their buy-in.
So apart from getting Alpha Company soldiers to support your cause, did you get any other officers?
Officers or soldiers?
Did you get additional officers?
Additional officers, after Basiru withdrew, there was 3 of us again. Myself, Sanasabali, and now Lieutenant Jammeh. And we agreed that, look, really, we cannot launch a coup with just the 3 of us. We need officers to be in command of the troops, to lead them into battle if need be. So we decided at that time to recruit Sadibu Hydra. But excuse me, let me come back. I've forgotten one point when you talk about officers. Yankuba Toure was posted to Farafenni, but intermittently he would come down to Banjul to collect the pay for soldiers who were receiving their salaries over the pay table. And this was even before Yaya Jammeh came in. When he passed by Yundum once, and I called him aside and I spoke to him. And I told him that this is what is happening. And I know for a fact that if whatever we launch from Banjul, well, before I went into that, I got his buy-in once he agreed to be part of it. I told him that, look, his role would be not only to bring soldiers on board from Farafenni, but if he could not do that, was because I know for a fact that if we launch from Banjul, there would be a counter-attack from Farafenni, that he should make sure that he stalls or stops that attack. And that is how Yankuba Toure came on board.
So he was an original member of it?
The original 5, like I said, but he was brought on board subsequently, but that was his only role. And because he was not at Yundum or in the combos at the time, he did not play an active role in the takeover of the July 22nd itself. In fact, he came down to Banjul a couple of days later because we had stopped the ferries from crossing. They could not cross.
But he is one of those who originally agreed
yes,
to participating in the coup.
Yes, sir.
So now you have 4 of you.
Yes.
Proceed.
So we decided that, well, we need somebody else on board, at least one person. And we looked at the possibility of bringing Sadibu Hydra on board. But we agreed that we would not give him the full details of the plan. What we would do was tell him that this is going to happen if we are arrested or something happens, because it had leaked and, excuse me, it had leaked and There's a possibility that before the day itself, we would have been detained. Then he should lead the troops to come and free us, and we continue the takeover from there. So that was Salih Buhaidar's role. Now, with regards to other officers, I cannot recall whether it was myself and Sana or myself and Yahya Jammeh. We decided to sound the opinion of Major Conte, Major Abdullah Conte. Major Abdullah Conte is a good senior officer, professional. He knows his stuff, tactically minded. He's a good professional, all-round officer. So we just approached him and spoke to him around the football field in Yundum when we were overlooking a parade. And we didn't tell him exactly what was happening, but we asked him of his opinion about what was prevailing in the country, whether anything better could be done, and what was the possibility of the military stepping in. He agreed that, first of all, that truly the government was not doing well, that they could do much better, that the Gambian people had been left behind, and something should be done. But with regards to a military takeover, he said that that would not work. I think he said in Wolof, "Loldu Musa Dofi." So once he said that, we backed off because we knew that it's a no-go area. We cannot proceed and then tell him exactly what we were doing.
How about Durcham?
Oh, okay. Excuse me. Yes, Ndurcham was briefly brought on board, and perhaps that's why, because there's so many activities took place. So if I skip something, it's not because I'm trying to leave it out. It's because I'm trying to cram as many details in as short as possible time. Yes, Ndurcham was brought on board by Jammeh, I believe. Jammeh was the one who recommended Ndurcham. And briefly he came on board, he attended 1 or 2 meetings, and he was always panicking. I'll give you an example. When we had a meeting in Jammeh's house, I think, first of all, he came very improperly dressed. And then his T-shirt was inside out. When he was going out, he had his slippers on the wrong feet. He was just not himself. Well, with all due respect, to him. But put it this way: planning a coup is not an easy thing. Not everybody can withstand the pressure and the scrutiny because of the implications. So.
So therefore, among all those planners, it was yourself, Yahya Jammeh,
yes, sir,
and Sana Sabali, at least, who were able to really deal with the pressure, who did not buckle under all that pressure.
Well, I would not say that